The abandoned purchase Marcus Chen had seen enough of the galaxy to know when something was too good to be true. 20 years in the Colonial Defense Force had taught him that lesson through scars both visible and hidden. Yet there he stood in the cramped office of the Frontier Registration Bureau, staring at a listing that defied all logic. Colony Station Epsilon 9, located on the remote world of Europa 7, was being offered for the symbolic price of 1 galactic credit. The bureaucrat, behind the desk, a thin man whose augmented eyes glowed with data streams, seemed almost embarrassed by the listing. Marcus could understand why. Europa 7 sat at the edge of human space, 3 jump points from the nearest supply station. The planet itself was classified as marginally habitable, with an atmosphere that required minimal filtration and gravity. That was only slightly higher than Earth standard. But these weren't the factors that made the listing suspicious. It was the complete absence of explanation for why a fully constructed colony station would be essentially given away. Marcus transferred the single credit from his account without hesitation. After 2 decades of military service, he had enough savings to live comfortably on any core world. But comfort had never suited him. The war with the Krellian Empire had ended 5 years ago, leaving thousands of soldiers like him adrift in a peace they didn't quite know how to navigate. Perhaps this mysterious colony would give him the purpose he'd been searching for since hanging up his uniform. The journey to Europa 7 took 3 weeks aboard a cargo hauler that smelled of processed protein and recycled air. Captain Rodriguez, a woman whose cybernetic arm could crush steel beams, warned him repeatedly about the dangers of the frontier. Pirates, she said, weren't the worst thing out there. It was the corporations that truly frightened her, especially Stellarian Corp, which had been aggressively expanding into the outer territories, claiming abandoned settlements through legal loopholes and forced acquisitions. Marcus listened to her warnings while reviewing what little information existed about Colony Station Epsilon 9. The records showed it had been established 15 years ago as a research outpost, funded by a consortium of universities studying xenobiology. The funding had dried up 8 years ago, and the station had been marked as abandoned ever since. No explanation for why the researchers left, no final reports, just silence. The cargo hauler dropped him at the edge of Europa 7's atmosphere with a supply pod and a promise to return in 6 months. As his shuttle descended through clouds that shimmered with an almost metallic sheen, Marcus got his first look at his new property. The colony station sprawled across a plateau, overlooking a vast canyon system. 4 interconnected domes gleamed in the amber light of the system's binary suns, their surfaces scarred by years of exposure to the elements but still intact. What struck him most was the size of it. The listing had mentioned a small research station, but this complex could easily house 500 people. Landing pads stretched along the western edge, and he could see the outline of what appeared to be extensive underground facilities carved into the plateau itself. His military instincts immediately began cataloging defensive positions, supply routes, and potential weaknesses. The main airlock cycled open with surprising ease, systems still functional despite years of abandonment. Inside, emergency lighting cast long shadows down corridors that should have been thick with dust. Instead, Marcus found signs of recent maintenance, fresh welding marks on pipe joints, clean air filters, a food processor that hummed with power. Though its last log entry was dated 7 years ago, he was examining the contradictions when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong in an abandoned station. The soft whisper of breathing, barely audible but unmistakably human. Marcus's hand moved instinctively to the plasma cutter on his belt, a tool that could serve as a weapon if needed. Years of combat training took over as he moved silently toward the source of the sound, following it through a maze of corridors that led deeper into the station. The breathing led him to what had once been a laboratory, its equipment covered with protective sheets. But it wasn't the lab that caught his attention. It was the hidden door, cleverly disguised as a storage panel that stood slightly ajar. Beyond it, stairs descended into darkness. The breathing was coming from below. Marcus descended carefully, his footsteps silent on the metal steps. The stairway opened into a vast underground chamber that shouldn't have existed according to any schematic he'd seen. Hydroponic gardens stretched in neat rows under artificial sunlight. Water recyclers hummed efficiently. And there, tending to a crop of what looked like modified earth vegetables, were people. Not just people, children, dozens of them, ranging from perhaps 5 to 15 years old, all wearing makeshift uniforms cobbled together from various sources. They worked with a precision that spoke of long practice, their movements coordinated despite the absence of any visible adult supervision. One child, a girl who couldn't have been more than 12, noticed him first. Instead of screaming or running, she simply straightened and called out in a clear voice that carried across the chamber. Within seconds, Marcus found himself surrounded by children, all maintaining a careful distance, all watching him with eyes that had seen too much for their age. An older boy, perhaps 16, stepped forward. He carried himself with the bearing of someone used to responsibility, and the others clearly deferred to him. When he spoke, his voice was steady despite the uncertainty in his eyes. "You're not from Stellarian Corp," he said. It wasn't a question. Marcus shook his head slowly, keeping his hands visible and away from any weapons. "My name is Marcus Chen. I legally purchased this station 3 weeks ago. I didn't know anyone was here." The boy studied him for a long moment, then seemed to reach a decision. "I'm David. We're what's left of the Prometheus project." He paused, as if weighing how much to reveal. "Our parents were the researchers. When Stellarian Corp tried to take their work by force 8 years ago, they fought back. They lost." The weight of that simple statement hit Marcus like a physical blow. These weren't just abandoned children. They were orphans of a corporate massacre, survivors who had somehow managed to keep themselves alive and hidden for 8 years. The organizational structure, the disciplined behavior, the hidden facilities. It all made sense now. They had created their own society, their own survival system in the shadow of tragedy. David continued, his voice taking on an edge of desperate hope. "The station's ownership has been in legal limbo since our parents died. Stellarian couldn't claim it officially without revealing what they'd done. But they've been watching, waiting for someone to take legal possession so they could challenge it in court or—" He didn't finish the sentence, but Marcus understood. "Or take it by force, using the new owner as a scapegoat." "What was your parents' work?" Marcus asked, though part of him already suspected the answer. David exchanged glances with several of the older children, then made another decision. "Come with us. You need to see it to understand." They led him deeper into the underground complex, through passages that had been carved with precision tools and reinforced with materials scavenged from the surface. The children had built an entire hidden city down here, complete with living quarters, educational facilities, and workshops, where they maintained and repaired equipment with surprising skill. But it was the vault at the very bottom that held the true secret. Behind doors that required 3 different biometric scans from 3 different children, lay a laboratory that hummed with dormant potential. In its center, suspended in a crystalline matrix, was something that made Marcus's breath catch. It wasn't quite plant, wasn't quite machine, but something in between. Tendrils of what looked like living metal intertwined with organic compounds that pulsed with their own inner light. Data screens around it displayed complex molecular structures and energy readings that fluctuated like a heartbeat. "Our parents called it the synthesis," David explained. "It's a bridge between organic and inorganic matter, self-repairing, self-replicating, capable of transforming barren worlds into gardens or creating structures that grow rather than being built." They were 3 months from a working prototype when Stellarian came. Marcus stared at the creation, his mind racing through the implications. This wasn't just revolutionary technology. It was the kind of breakthrough that could reshape humanity's expansion across the galaxy. No wonder Stellarian had been willing to kill for it, and no wonder these children had protected it so fiercely. "They'll come for you now," David said quietly. "Now that someone owns the station legally, Stellarian will make their move. We've been preparing for 8 years, but we're just kids. We needed—" He trailed off, but Marcus heard what he didn't say. They needed an adult. Someone with experience. Someone who could fight. Marcus looked at the faces surrounding him. Children who had been forced to grow up too fast, who had preserved their parents' legacy against impossible odds. He thought of his 20 years in the military, fighting to protect humanity's colonies from external threats, never realizing that sometimes the greatest dangers came from within. "How long do we have?" he asked, already shifting into tactical planning mode. "Our sensors picked up a Stellarian ship entering the system 6 hours ago," a girl with cybernetic implants reported. "Based on their trajectory, they'll be here in 18 hours. Marcus nodded, a familiar calm settling over him. This was what he knew. This was what he'd been trained for. "Then we'd better get to work. Show me everything. Every defense, every resource, every advantage we have. If Stellarian wants a fight, we'll give them one they won't forget, the hidden legacy." The children moved with practiced efficiency that would have impressed Marcus's old drill sergeants. Within minutes of his declaration, they had pulled up holographic displays showing every aspect of the colony's defenses. What he saw was both impressive and heartbreaking. These kids had spent 8 years turning their home into a fortress, using knowledge gleaned from their parents' research and whatever military databases they could access. Sarah, the girl with cybernetic implants who served as their technical specialist, walked him through their preparations. They had modified the station's mining lasers into defensive weapons, created electromagnetic pulse mines from salvaged equipment, and even developed a primitive shield system based on their parents' research into energy field manipulation. It was ingenious, but it wouldn't be enough against a fully armed corporate military vessel. "Your parents," Marcus said, studying the shield specifications. "They weren't just xenobiologists, were they?" David shook his head. "Mom was a quantum physicist. Dad specialized in adaptive systems. The others came from different fields too. Stellarian recruited them for something called Project Prometheus, promised them unlimited resources to develop transformative technologies. When they realized the company planned to weaponize everything, they tried to leave." Marcus understood now why the children were so capable. They weren't just the offspring of scientists. They were the children of geniuses who had apparently passed on both their intellectual gifts and their moral courage. But genius alone wouldn't stop pulse cannons and corporate mercenaries. "Sarah, can you access the synthesis safely?" Marcus asked, an idea forming. She nodded cautiously. "We run maintenance protocols every week. Why?" "Your parents created something that bridges organic and technology. The station is technology. Europa 7 is organic in its own way. What if we don't fight Stellarian ship to ship? What if we make the planet itself our weapon?" The children exchanged glances, and Marcus saw the spark of possibility ignite in their eyes. David leaned forward, his mind already racing through the implications. The canyon system. It's rich in mineral deposits that the synthesis could potentially bond with. If we could extend its influence that far, we'd need a delivery system, Sarah interjected, her fingers already dancing over holographic interfaces. The maintenance drones. We could modify them to carry synthesis samples. Within hours, the colony had transformed into a hive of purposeful activity. The younger children prepared emergency shelters in the deepest parts of the underground complex. The older ones worked alongside Marcus to implement their desperate plan. They had one advantage. Stellarian didn't know about the underground facilities or the true extent of what the colonists had achieved. Marcus established defensive positions at key points throughout the surface structures, teaching the older children basic combat tactics while hoping they wouldn't need them. His military experience proved invaluable in organizing their resources, but it was the children's innovation that truly impressed him. They had spent years learning to survive with limited resources, and that experience had made them remarkably adaptable. 12 hours into their preparations, Sarah made a discovery that changed everything. While modifying the drones, she had accessed her mother's personal research files, protected by encryption that had taken her years to crack. What she found there made her gasp. "Mr. Chen, you need to see this." The files contained video logs from Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, Sarah's mother and the project's lead researcher. In the final entry, recorded just days before the attack, she spoke directly to the camera with urgent intensity. "If you're watching this, then Stellarian has made their move, and we've failed to stop them. But failure doesn't mean the end." The Synthesis is more than we've told anyone, more than even Stellarian suspects. It's not just a bridge between organic and technological. It's an evolutionary catalyst. When properly activated, it doesn't just transform matter, it awakens it. The video showed Dr. Reeves activating something in the synthesis chamber, causing the entire structure to pulse with brilliant light. We've hidden the activation key in the one place Stellarian would never look, in our children's DNA. Each of them carries a piece of the genetic sequence needed to fully activate the synthesis. Together, they are the key to humanity's next evolutionary leap. Marcus stared at the children around him with new understanding. They weren't just protecting their parents' work. They were the work. The synthesis hadn't been the only experiment. The children themselves were part of the project, designed to be the bridge between humanity's present and its future. "Did you know?" he asked David quietly. The boy shook his head, tears streaming down his face. "We suspected something. We're all stronger than we should be, heal faster, understand complex systems intuitively. But we thought it was just good. Genetics." A proximity alarm shattered the moment. Stellarian had arrived ahead of schedule. The corporate vessel, a sleek predator bristling with weapons, settled into orbit above the colony. Within minutes, a transmission came through. The face that appeared on the screen was everything Marcus had expected from a corporate executive. Cold, calculating, and utterly without conscience. Director Vance of Stellarian's Acquisition Division smiled with predatory satisfaction. "Mr. Chen, I presume. You've caused us quite an inconvenience by purchasing this property. However, we're prepared to be generous. Accept our offer of 10,000 credits for the station, and we'll allow you to leave unharmed." Marcus stepped forward, letting his military bearings show. "This station and everything in it belongs to me by legal right. You have no claim here." Vance's smile widened. "Legal rights are such fragile things on the frontier. Accidents happen, pirates attack, colonies fail. But perhaps we can avoid such unfortunate events. Our scans show you're not alone down there. Children, from the biosignatures, the offspring of the former researchers, I'd guess. Surrender the station, and we'll ensure they're properly cared for." The threat was clear. Marcus glanced at David, who nodded grimly. They both knew what Stellarian's care would mean. Either death or worse, experimentation to unlock the secrets the children carried. "You have 1 hour to leave Europa 7's space," Marcus replied. "After that, I'll consider your presence an act of aggression and respond accordingly." Vance laughed. "One aging soldier and a handful of children against Stellarian Corp? You're either brave or foolish, Mr. Chen." "I've been both," Marcus said. "But today, I'm something else. I'm angry." He cut the transmission and turned to the children. "Initialize the plan. Sarah, how long until the drones are ready?" 15 minutes, she replied, her fingers flying over controls. "David, take the younger children to the deep shelters. If this goes badly, we're not leaving you." David interrupted. "This is our home, our fight." Marcus saw the determination. In their eyes, and knew arguing would be pointless. These weren't ordinary children anymore, if they ever had been. They were survivors, fighters, the living legacy of parents who had died for their principles. The first attack came exactly 1 hour later. Kinetic bombardment, designed to destroy the surface structures and force them into the open. But the modified shields held, drawing power from the planet's magnetic field itself through connections the synthesis had already begun to establish. Stellarian's mercenaries landed in force, expecting minimal resistance. Instead, they found the colony's mining equipment turned into formidable weapons. Marcus coordinated the defense with military precision, while the children executed maneuvers they had drilled for years. But they were still outnumbered and outgunned. That's when Sarah activated the drones. Clouds of microscopic synthesis material spread through the canyon system, bonding with the mineral deposits and the unique crystalline structures that gave Europa 7 its distinctive shimmer. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The ground itself began to respond, forming barriers that blocked the mercenaries' advance, creating electromagnetic fields that disabled their equipment. But the true transformation came when the children, following instructions from Dr. Reeves' files, joined hands in the synthesis chamber. Each of them carried a piece of the activation sequence in their DNA, and together, they completed the key their parents had hidden. The synthesis erupted with light that could be seen from orbit. But instead of destruction, it brought transformation. The technology spread through the colony's systems, through the planet's crust, reaching out to touch every piece of human equipment on or near Europa 7. The mercenaries' weapons dissolved and reformed as medical scanners. Their combat armor became environmental suits designed for exploration rather than warfare. The Stellarian warship found its weapon systems converting into communication arrays and scientific sensors. Director Vance's furious face appeared on the screens one last time. "What have you done?" "We've evolved," David said, stepping forward with the other children. "Our parents knew that humanity's greatest weakness wasn't our technology or our biology. It was our tendency toward conflict. The synthesis doesn't just bridge the gap between organic and machine. It transforms our tools of war into instruments of progress." The transformation spread beyond Europa 7, carried by quantum entanglement to every piece of Stellarian technology in the sector. Within hours, one of humanity's most aggressive corporations found itself involuntarily converted into a force for exploration and scientific advancement. Marcus stood with the children as they watched Stellarian's ship depart, its crew confused but unharmed. The colony around them hummed with new life, structures that would now grow and adapt, healing themselves and improving over time. "What happens now?" Sarah asked, looking up at him. Marcus smiled, feeling a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced since his best days in the service. "Now we build. Your parents started something remarkable here. They gave us the tools to spread across the galaxy not as conquerors, but as gardeners. Every barren world can bloom. Every harsh environment can be made livable, and it starts here with us." David nodded, then surprised Marcus by asking, "Will you stay? We need someone to help us, to teach us, not just about defending ourselves, but about being human while we're becoming something more." Marcus looked at the faces around him. Children who had lost everything but refused to surrender hope, who had protected a secret that could transform humanity's future. He had bought this station for 1 credit, looking for purpose in his retirement. Instead, he had found a family and a mission that would reshape the galaxy. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "This is home now, for all of us." Over the following months, word spread about Europa 7's transformation. Scientists, refugees, idealists, they came seeking a new way of living. The children, no longer hidden, became teachers themselves, sharing the gift their parents had died to protect. The synthesis continued to evolve, learning from each new world it touched, adapting to different environments and needs. What had begun as a desperate defense became humanity's greatest tool for peaceful expansion. Wars became harder to wage when weapons transformed themselves into tools of creation. Marcus often stood on the colony's observation deck, watching. The binary sun set over a landscape that grew more beautiful each day. The synthesis had spread through the canyon system, creating crystalline forests that sang in the wind and converted raw minerals into useful materials. Sarah would join him, sometimes her cybernetic implants now integrated seamlessly with the colony's growing neural network. "My mother would have loved to see this," she said one evening. "She did see it," Marcus replied. "She saw it in you and all of you. Your parents knew exactly what they were creating, not just the synthesis, but you. The next step in human evolution isn't about transcending our humanity. It's about finally growing into it." The galaxy was vast, full of challenges and wonders yet to be discovered. But humanity now had the tools to meet those challenges not with weapons, but with wisdom. It had started with 1 credit, 1 station, and 1 man looking for purpose. It had become something neither Marcus nor Stellarian could have imagined, the birthplace of humanity's true stellar age. As new ships arrived daily, bringing settlers eager to be part of the transformation, Marcus knew that his military career had only been preparation for this greater battle, the fight to prove that humanity's greatest strength lay not in its ability to destroy, but in its capacity to create. to adapt and to transform conflict into cooperation. The children of Epsilon 9 had protected more than just their parents' research. They had preserved the hope that humanity could be better, could choose creation over destruction. And with each new world the synthesis touched, that hope spread further across the stars, carrying the message that evolution wasn't just about survival of the fittest, it was about the transformation of all. Marcus Chen had paid 1 credit for a space station. In return, he had gained a family, a purpose, and the chance to help humanity take its next great leap forward. As he watched David teaching newcomers how to interface with the synthesis, saw Sarah designing new applications for the technology, witnessed the younger children playing in gardens that hadn't existed months before, he knew that this was worth more than all the credits in the galaxy. The secret of Europa 7 was no longer hidden. It was spreading, transforming, evolving. And at its heart were the children who had refused to let their parents' dream die, the soldier who had chosen protection over profit, and the truth that humanity's greatest discoveries came not from taking, but from nurturing. The station that had cost 1 credit had become priceless, and its story had only just begun.